Monday, the 12th of August. We made it to hump day working through this work week. You found us here at the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We always talk about the top weather headlines from across the region, around the country, truly around the world, and sometimes beyond. We talk space and climate, science news, all kinds of great stuff here on the Weather Desk. We've got a big show today. We've had a lot of really packed shows, just a lot of weather stories going on. So today we're going to focus on storms that have absolutely battered the Midwest. Parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio hit really hard. There are more storms out there this morning, and we're going to show you where some of those are coming up. But we've got some video to share and some stories to share about those big storms hitting the Midwest, the ones that already occurred. Lightning hospitalized several Ohio prisoners. They were finishing up dinner, returning back to the facility when that was hit, and we'll show you the storm that did that and tell you more on that. In addition, there was that terrible earthquake in Colombia, and the death toll, as they're continuing to search for survivors, that will continue to rise. We do have some recovery news. Operation Blessing from right here in Virginia Beach headed down to help out. We'll tell you what's going on with that. We also have the latest developments in the tropics. So a lot going on both in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Two storms that potentially may develop. One is very, very likely to impact Hawaii, and I'll show you that. And then we've got this other one in the basin, which could produce some rough weather across the Lesser Antilles and work into the Caribbean. So we'll talk more about those. Also, FEMA is helping Puerto Rico with their water crisis. We'll give you the latest on that. And believe it or not, climate change may be taking a toll on your sleep. We'll talk about that coming up along with our extended forecast through the upcoming weekend here for Hampton Roads. We'll let you know what to expect. But we begin with the storms that were erupting yesterday. We had a lot of activity flare up across parts of the Midwest. You take a look at those storms as they rolled through Chicago. There were tornado warnings. There were warnings back across Indiana and Ohio. A lot of that activity really dove to the south and kind of fizzled out overnight. We do have additional rounds and watches that are out right now for portions of Nebraska and Iowa, back across central and northern parts of Illinois as well. These storms that slammed the Midwest throughout the week have actually turned deadly, and even more storms, as you can see, are hitting the region today. ABC's Sophie Flay has the latest.
Powerful and deadly storms sweeping across the Midwest were strong enough to flip over this car on a highway in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh my God.
Blinding rain making driving treacherous. In the Chicago area, winds topping 90 miles per hour. Multiple tornadoes touching down. Downed power lines sparking a fire, engulfing a home in flames. Other houses torn apart. Massive trees uprooted.
I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful that everyone is okay, but this is devastating.
The storm's also hammering Indiana. In the city of Portage, one person was killed after this house exploded. Officials believe weather was a factor, calling it one of the worst weather events in the city's history.
I've been a resident of this city for 50 years, and I think this is probably one of the worst things that we've ever had to go through.
A 4-year-old child was also killed in the state after a tree fell on a home. The downpours triggering flash flooding, washing out roads and leaving drivers stranded. Water rising to the roofs of these cars in Perry County, Ohio. And nearby Roseville, one person died after floodwaters prevented emergency crews from reaching them. Across the storm zone, hundreds of thousands of customers left without power. The outages expected to last for days in some areas.
More storms are expected today from St. Louis to Indianapolis. Sophie Flay, ABC News, New York.
All right, Sophie. And again, you can see a couple of watches already out this morning across portions of Iowa, Nebraska, and Illinois. We're going to focus on the severe weather outlook in just a moment, but I want to take you to just outside of Cleveland, and I'm going to show you this radar, and I'm going to jog it back a little bit in time. This is yesterday afternoon and I'm stopping it here around 5 o'clock or so. So here's 440, and you can see the line of storms. Here's the town of Grafton, and there's a prison there. Again, this is about 30 minutes or so outside of Cleveland. You see the storms here coming through as I just shuttle this slowly forward. Right there around 5:10 to 5:20 or so, this is when this very intense thunderstorm rolled over the prison. And a lightning strike at that Ohio State prison sent 16 people to the hospital last night. Now, it happened again. This was at the Grafton Reintegration Center, and it's about 30 minutes, as I mentioned, outside of Cleveland. Emergency dispatchers had to send ambulances to from 3 counties to the facility. A prison spokesperson says the lightning hit occurred as inmates were returning from their dinner, and officials didn't clarify whether the people were outside when the storm was possible. As of this morning, no deaths have been reported from that particular incident. All right, we are going to talk some more about the outlook here and the severe weather potential. So as we take a look, let's go ahead and zoom in to the same region. We have a thunderstorm watch here over Illinois. We do have some areas back down across Indiana and Ohio where there are flood warnings. So numerous flood warnings. And again, we can take this graphic full. I just wanted to give you a little more information on this with these warnings. South of Muncie, we've got a warning there. Some very intense rainfall coming down. Again, multiple warnings, 129,000 people there. So these are some fairly well-populated parts of Indiana and into Ohio. As we look back across areas out to the east where we were in Iowa and crossing into Illinois, and this is around the Davenport area, we have multiple warnings, including a new one, and it looks like there may be a possible rotation within this cell there. That area I'm highlighting, we'll take a look. Severe storm warning, again, about 104,000 or so people under that, and there's a thunderstorm, obviously a severe thunderstorm, but there may be some indication of rotation within that cell. So we're going to keep an eye to all of that. Now for the severe weather outlook across the country, parts of Nebraska, southern South Dakota through Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and into western Kentucky. Those areas all under a slight or level 2 threat, and that extends back down as a marginal or level 1 risk through Tennessee and areas down to the south of that, all the way to the southeast coast. The chances for tornadoes, not that great, but there is a slightly elevated risk here, Illinois, Indiana, and into western parts of Kentucky. You'll also notice the hail potential greater out across western parts of Nebraska, southwest South Dakota, and northeast Colorado. There is that lesser risk, but still a risk across Illinois and parts of the northeast, the eastern Great Lakes. Now, the wind threat is the greatest. You see that's from Illinois. It extends all the way down to Georgia and South Carolina. As far as tomorrow's severe weather threat, a lot of the same area. It's a marginal risk tomorrow, but you can see that chance there and into Friday as well. So folks here in the Midwest certainly need to keep a close eye to things. All right, coming up next, where the search for survivors stands in Colombia 2 days after that powerful earthquake shook the country, plus the local help now on the way. Good morning. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. All right, we're taking a look at earthquake activity here in the United States. There's been a lot of little earthquakes here out along the San Andreas and out to the west in California. We've had some activity in Texas and Oklahoma. I was mentioning to our director and producer, little something going on earlier around the New Madrid Fault right there in the southeast part of Missouri, and we had one in eastern Tennessee as well. So little activity here in the U.S., nothing big, and certainly nothing compared to that 7.4 magnitude earthquake that shook Colombia so violently a couple days ago. Rescue crews are racing to find survivors in the rubble. Again, this is 2 days after that 7.4 magnitude earthquake hit western Colombia. More than 200 people have been killed. Reed Binion reports.
Colombia's president on Tuesday touring areas devastated by the massive earthquake that rocked the country Monday, the government declaring a national disaster as the nation's army deploys forces to the most gravely devastated areas. Some areas hard to reach, including near the quake's epicenter, have yet to receive help, according to one indigenous leader. A United Nations official says distribution of food is critical in the coming days. World leaders are offering assistance, and so are aid groups.
We've already deployed a team. They're already on the ground. The devastation is vast, and it covers a large geographical area.
Volunteers in the U.S. also doing what they can to help.
Just trying to help out, whoever might need it.
Those relief efforts coming amid ongoing rescue efforts. Emergency responders racing to find people still buried under the rubble. Volunteers aiding in the daunting task of locating survivors. Video shows the moment an infant was pulled from the wreckage of an apartment building. One of the rescuers said he and several other civilians helped save the child after he heard someone under the rubble calling for help. The assistance from volunteers coming as first responders need all the help they can get amid the massive rescue effort. Crews also utilizing specialized search and rescue dogs that Colombian police say are playing a key role. I'm Reed Binion reporting.
And there is some help from our area, from Virginia, getting ready to head to Colombia. Operation Blessing, based out of Virginia Beach, is sending a disaster response team to the region today. Once they touch down, they'll begin assessing the damage and identifying the areas of greatest need. Operation Blessing also still has a team on the ground in Venezuela after that country was also hit by back-to-back earthquakes in June. This is video of volunteers on the ground there. All right, we're going to turn our attention next to the tropics. They are getting more active, and we're going to show you what we're tracking in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Plus, Puerto Rico is now getting federal help as extreme drought conditions continue to grip the island. Welcome back. All right, let's take a look at the tropics because there's a lot going on. You know, we went through weeks and weeks and weeks of nothing. We were like quiet as a mouse, nothing going on in the Atlantic. Of course, we have the Super El Nino going on, and that can be very disruptive to potential systems. But right now, we are monitoring a couple of areas. There's actually a third one off to the north. That one is moving away, so no real concern to us at all. But we are watching these two, and one in particular here has a really good chance of developing into an organized tropical system. So you take a look again, this one moving away with a moderate chance of development. This one here, about a 20% chance over the coming week. Plenty of time to watch that before it becomes any kind of a concern for our area. But this area here, as it's moving along, this could be more problematic for the Lesser Antilles. Now, it's very interesting. We're going to get into the track and the spaghetti plot on this. Chance for development around 80%. Remember, we're going to show you a story coming up in a moment about Puerto Rico and their desperate need for rain. You know, it's kind of like one of those things, pick your poison. You're in drought, so you need the rain, and a tropical rain could really help fill some of their reservoirs. Of course, with that tropical rain comes the wind and some of the other issues that the island doesn't need. So it's going to be interesting to see how exactly things play out. Let me show you what the Hurricane Center is doing with this Invest 92L. As it moves along, you can see the spaghetti plots really do bring it towards the Lesser Antilles. Now, Puerto Rico's right here. You see San Juan, the label there on the city. It's really covering up. If we zoom in, you would see just a couple of these spaghetti plot, you know, tracks kind of come over Puerto Rico. Most of them do carry it into the Eastern Caribbean. So we'll have to see what happens with that. The models a couple days ago were farther north and kind of recurved it. Now they're trending farther south. So it's increasingly likely that whatever moves in here would make it towards the Caribbean. But keep this in mind, there is some strong wind shear, and increasing wind shear really acts to, you know, break apart or squash development that we could see. So looking at some of the models, you know, yeah, while that center of circulation tracks here, we've got a good chance of it becoming a better organized system. Looking at some of the models, they kind of weaken it again as it encounters that shear later in the week. It's too early to say for sure, but this is the system that we're most closely watching in the Atlantic. Over in the Pacific, we have Hawaii right here. Couple areas of interest. This one has a good chance of developing, about 70%. But this area here, a 90% chance of development within the next couple of days. So if it was just one of these two, we'd be really focused on this one, for instance, with a 70% chance. But this area here, we need to watch because this is the one that is truly threatening Hawaii with a 90% chance of development. You look at the models and the spaghetti plot here, how many of them track right over the Big Island and then closer or just maybe a little bit to the south of the rest of the chain. This could be a huge problem for Hawaii as we head into the weekend. Take a look at the Euro and the GFS models next to each other. Both of them, again, bringing it over or very close to Hawaii. This is late Saturday into Sunday. It kind of moves along. And then by Monday into Tuesday, it passes the island. So this weekend could be really rough for Hawaii. We'll continue to watch that and keep you updated. Now, you remember we just mentioned Puerto Rico and the need for water. Let's talk about the ongoing water crisis right now for Puerto Rico. FEMA is now providing trailers full of water to help people cope with the severe drought crippling the island. Right now, more than 180,000 households are being forced to go without running water for 48 hours at a time. The restrictions are also taking a toll on businesses.
Definitely this week we were not prepared actually, so getting water, looking for OSs to get the water or friends that let us fill the gallons. So for work, for anything that we need to do in the house, it was very, very, very difficult for us.
Now, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor, on May 26th, there was no drought of any level on the island. Now, more than 2/3 of the island is in drought. The U.S. Drought Monitor update comes out tomorrow, and we will keep a close eye to that. All right, next, hot nighttime temperatures could be costing you hours of sleep every year. What a new study found. And as we look live outside, I'll have that Wednesday forecast for Hampton Roads. That'll be coming up in just a couple minutes. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. We're taking a look at our morning low temperatures. You can see we were down into the mid to upper 60s inland areas. Really not bad at all. For most of the metro area, it was more like lower to mid 70s. 73 in Virginia Beach at Oceana, 74 in Hampton. We were down around 74 at the airport and 75 for the downtown area. Our normal low is 72. So we were a little bit above normal, and this hasn't been a bad morning. The humidity not quite as bad as it has been, but we have had some very, very warm mornings so far this summer. At times upper 70s, closer to 80 with more humidity. And a new study reveals rising overnight temperatures could be costing you hours of sleep every year. Meteorologist Taylor Stephenson has a closer look at the findings.
Getting a good night's sleep is important for your health, but rising late night temperatures are making that more difficult. We've all had those nights when it's just too hot to sleep well. Now a study from Climate Central shows those restless nights are becoming more common due to climate change. Researchers found the average person lost about 56 hours of sleep each year between 2020 and 2025. That's because nighttime temperatures were too warm for continuous rest. The biggest impacts were found across cities in the Middle East, where overnight heat is especially intense, but that trend isn't limited to one part of the world. Compared to the early 1970s, people in nearly every city studied are now losing at least twice as much sleep. In the United States, people in Florida, the desert Southwest, and California lost the most sleep. One way to combat the overnight heat is to crank up the air conditioning, but constantly using AC is not financially possible for some people. In instances like this, climate change spills over into environmental inequity. Low-income communities and communities of color will be impacted the most by climate change. For 13 News Now, I'm meteorologist Taylor Stephenson.
All right, let's take a look at our forecast and see if we're going to see some cooler or warmer overnight lows. You'll see that going forward. Here's what we have right now. It's kind of hazy, a little smoky out there still. That haze kind of contributed to by that smoke that's been kind of wafting in from the west and the northwest. Our air quality is not that bad, but aloft we do have some smoke particles kind of creating the haze. We'll see a mix of sunshine and clouds as we go through the afternoon. Highs today close to 90 degrees. Factor in the humidity, and the humidity is not really that bad right now, but it's high enough, the heat and humidity, to produce feels like temperatures up in the lower to mid 90s officially. Some areas down south could be even hotter than that when you factor in the humidity. Places like Elizabeth City and Edenton tend to be more humid. As we take a look at our rain chances, pretty low today and tomorrow. I do think Friday is going to be a little higher. And honestly, I've been kind of shaving this down a little bit because the models are still coming in a bit drier for tomorrow. So hopefully we get a couple dry days, another chance for isolated storms there on Friday, and then cooler Saturday, mid 80s. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we start to warm it back up, at least for the early part of next week, maybe a little more relief late next week. Here's the beach forecast today. If you want to get out and beat the heat this way, you're going to find that UV index still very high, but generally a pretty good looking day. I'm not too worried about the rain chances today at the beach. There's a slight chance you might see something trying to pop up with what heat there is and the humidity, but that's it, just a slight chance. Rip current threat is low. The surf height only a foot, and water temperatures now in the mid 70s. Out on the Chesapeake Bay, we also were looking at waves of about a foot or two. It was really flat yesterday. I noticed that. Northwest to north winds about 5 to 10 knots, occasionally a gust to 15 knots for the bay or the ocean. And you see the bay temperature now at 79. Let's get into the forecast. As far as the clouds go, see a little bit more off to the north. Again, kind of some haze out there more than anything else. Our graph model here doesn't project any rain. Some of the other models hint there might be a stray shower, maybe off to the southwest. Nothing really happening across Hampton Roads, at least nothing significant expected per the models. As we look ahead through the day tomorrow, a hotter day back into the low 90s. Get ready for that. And then as we get into our Friday, this is where we have a little bit better better chance for a few stray showers or storms popping up. So this is what we're looking at. Temperatures south side, upper 80s to near 90. Again, feels like temperatures in the lower to mid 90s. We'll see upper 80s to near 90 on the peninsula, 88 at Gloucester, mid 80s for the eastern shore and at the Outer Banks, upper 80s to near 90 inland. Lows tonight, 74, so that overnight low is not too bad. Tomorrow back up to 93 as we look at those lows over the coming weeks, upper 70s for Friday morning, so that's one of those warmer overnight lows. We will get a little bit of a break from the heat Saturday and Sunday, and then into early next week, Monday back up to 92. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Weather Desk. Certainly a lot to go over. It seems like there always is, and we'll have you covered each and every morning starting at 9. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. We'll see you next time.